afternoon. Welcome to you all. Welcome to this wonderful, wonderful literature festival here in Jaipur. My name is Kat. I am a storyteller. I travel all around the world telling stories, magical stories, true stories, funny stories, ghost stories, all kinds of stories. And today, to begin, I have one of my favorite stories. I collect stories from all around the world, and this story comes from South Africa. It's a Zulu story. It's called Muthoni and Her Necklace. And to the Zulu people, the tribes of the Zulus, a necklace was a very special thing. It was a highly symbolic thing. You couldn't go to the shop and buy a necklace. You would make your own. And the colors of the beads and the order in which you threaded them onto the string, they all said something about you. It was intensely personal. And this story takes place a long time ago in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere, really. And it is about a young woman called Muthoni. And Muthoni, at the time of this story, well, she was 17 years old, and she was growing into a beautiful young woman. She was almost as beautiful as you. No, you. She was gorgeous. She was getting plump, plump as a pillow. And the boys in the village loved that. They loved a little bit of meat on their women, and you know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yes. Muthoni had a big bottom, and when she walked through the village, her bottom would swing from side to side, and the men's eyes would go. Oh, she was quite shy. She was a modest girl, and especially when she spoke to the boys, she would keep her head down, and she would just look up at them with these long, long eyelashes. And the boys thought that was really cute. But the girls, they just wanted to rip her head off. She was so annoying. Everything about Muthoni was perfect. Her hair was always glossy and straight. She never had a spot or a pimple. Her teeth were shiny white and clean and perfect. And she was clever and kind, and all the older people liked her. She was just the most irritating girl in the village. And one day, it was a hot day, of course, the girls were standing around with nothing to do. And one of them said, why don't we play a trick on Muthoni? Yeah, said the others. Let's play a trick on Muthoni. And the girls went down to the river, which was just a couple of minutes' walk away, and they took off their necklaces, their beautiful beaded necklaces, and they dug a little hole there in the sand on the riverbank, and they put their necklaces into it, and then they covered the hole with a big flat stone. And they all sauntered back into the village. And Muthoni saw them coming. And of course, she saw that their necks were bare and empty. And she said, where are your necklaces? And they said, oh, those. Oh, we've thrown them in the river. Why? She said, it's a gift to the river goddess. Yeah, but why, said Muthoni, why have you thrown them in? Oh, because, said the girls, if you give a gift to the river goddess, she gives you a gift in return. She gives you a long and happy and healthy life. You want that, Muthoni, don't you? Yeah? Well, come on. You can give your necklace too, come on. And they took her down to the river. And Muthoni didn't want to throw her necklace into the river. It was the best thing she had in the whole of the world, but, well, they were all watching and waiting. So she took it off and she threw it. into the river. Oh, Muthoni, come, look, lift up the stone. And Muthoni lifted up the stone. And there were the girls' necklaces, and they all put them on, and they said, oh, Muthoni, you might have it here, but, well, don't have it there, do you? Or, no, the other way around. You might have it here, Muthoni, but you don't have it there, do you? Oh, silly girl. And away they went. And poor Muthoni sat there on the bank of the river, and she tried to think what to do. And she wondered whether she should get her revenge, whether she should come up with some kind of trick she could play in return, but she wasn't that kind of girl. That's why she didn't get on with them in the first place, and it wouldn't bring the necklace back, and that's what she wanted more than anything. So she sat quiet, just for a moment, let everything still down, so she could hear her own inner wisdom, her own inner voice speaking to her. And the voice said, ask the goddess to give it back. Yes, that's what I will do. I'll ask the goddess to give me the necklace back. And so she started walking along the bank of the river, and she came to a place where the river had swollen out into a big pool, like a big belly pool. And the water was deep and swirling. But she just knew in her heart that this was the place where the goddess was. And as she stood there looking down into the water, she thought the girls had come to push her in, but no, it was the goddess speaking to her. And the goddess said, come into the water, Muthoni. Come, find me, Muthoni. And Muthoni kicked off her sandals and she jumped into the pool, and she sank down into the water, and she could breathe. There beneath the water she could breathe. Down she came, right to the bottom of the pool. And there she found the river goddess. And she was expecting something beautiful, something wild and wonderful and magnificent. No, what she found was an old woman, a tiny little thing. Her skin so dark, so brown, so wrinkled and crinkled, she could almost have been a tree, a branch that had fallen from the river. Black eyes, bright eyes, a great halo of hair, silvery grey, floating around her in the water. But the strangest thing about this goddess was her skin, because her skin was covered with spots and boils and pimples and scabs and stores, and they were thick with pus, yellow, white pus. And she had been scratching them, and there was blood, and even under the water, Muthoni could smell the foul stench that was coming from the skin of this woman. And the old woman said, oh, Muthoni, my skin, it hurts. Come to me, Muthoni. Help me. Heal me. Lick me. Lick me, Muthoni. Lick me. And Muthoni looked at this foul woman, and with her good big heart, all she could see was a woman who was in pain and suffering. And Muthoni went to this old woman, and she took hold of that arm, and she started to lick it. And she licked, and she licked, and she licked the pus and the goo and the blood from the spots licking and licking and licking. And by the time she had finished licking, there wasn't even a scar to show they had ever been there at all. "You are an extraordinary young woman," said the goddess. "You are strong, you are kind, you are helpful. I will give you a gift, Muthoni, and I will protect you when the river demon comes. He eats young girls like you." And no sooner had she said this than there came a great rush of water up the river. So strong, Muthoni was nearly knocked from her feet, and up above she could see hundreds of silver fishes swimming for their lives, heading upstream. "Quick," she said, he's coming, hide, hide!" And behind her there was a kind of, well, like a hole, like a cleft in the rocks. "In there," she said, "hide, hide!" And Muthoni, she shoved herself into this cleft and hid in the rocks. And suddenly, with a great rush and roar of water, there was the demon. "Oh, where is she?" She said, "Where is she? I can smell her." "There's nothing here," said the goddess. "You're imagining it." "No," he said, "she's here. I can smell her. You've got girl here." And Muthoni, looking out from the crack in the rocks, she couldn't see the demon's head, but she could see an enormous, scaly body. She could see claws hanging down like daggers, a great thrashing tail behind. "Where is she?" said the demon. "She is not here," said the old woman. And with a great thud of his tail, boom, off he went, heading upstream. And when he had gone, the old woman beckoned Muthoni out, and she said, "Come, come, you are safe." And she gave Muthoni a fine necklace, a beautiful, beautiful necklace, grey and blue and green. It seemed to move and change and swirl with the colours of the river. And she said, "It is time for you to go back to your world now, Muthoni. Live a long and happy and healthy life. As you leave the pool, Muthoni, look down. You will see a small red stone. Pick it up. Throw it over your shoulder. Don't look back. Go now, Muthoni." And Muthoni, she swam up to the surface of the pool. She came out, she put on her sandals. As she was leaving the pool, sure enough, she saw a little round red stone. She picked it up, she threw it over her shoulder without looking back, and she walked on. And when she got back to the village, the girls saw her coming with her own necklace, but this beautiful new one as well. And they said, "Oh, where did you get that?" And she said, "I got it from the river goddess. She gave it to me." And they said, well, where is she?" They said, "Go to the belly pool. She's down in there, down in the water." And so the girls ran to that pool. They kicked off their sandals and they jumped in, padoosh, into the water, sank down, 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 down. When they got to the bottom, there was the goddess waiting to greet them. But her skin had broken out again into the spots and the boils and the sores and the scabs. And she said, "Oh, girls, my skin, it hurts. Come, come, heal me, help me." "No," said the girls, "we won't." "But you must," she said, "you must lick me. You must heal my skin." "No," said the girls, "we've come for your necklaces. We know you've got them because you've given one to Muthoni. Now come on, give us necklaces." And they stood there arguing and arguing and arguing. And they were making so much noise that they didn't even notice the great rush of water that nearly knocked them off their feet. They didn't notice the hundreds of silver fishes swimming over their heads. So they didn't see the river demon until he was upon them. And he was all teeth and claws and anger and fury. And not one of those girls lived to tell the story. So, my favourite bit in the whole of that story, I think, is that strange little detail about the red pebble. I'm always very curious about the red pebble. When she says, take the red pebble, throw it into the pool behind you, don't look back. And it seems to me that that is probably the lesson in that story, that life is all about letting go. And what you need to throw behind you and leave behind and move on to have that happy life. Life is all about new beginnings. You cannot give yourself a new past, but you can give yourself a new beginning. And the other thing is that in letting go, well, you are free to go wherever you want. You cannot write a new chapter in your book if you keep looking back and reading the old ones. And I've discovered that on this particular adventure to India. I have been here for 10 weeks. I've been traveling. And most of my journey, I have been in Goa, on the beaches in Goa, writing a book. And I had 5 weeks in Goa, and I wanted to write my very first adult book. I normally write for children, but I really, really wanted to write my first book for adults. And I knew what I wanted to write about. I wanted to write about an adventure I had last Christmas over in South America, in Peru and Bolivia, when I had been on an extraordinary journey and had had a love affair with an adventurer. And that was the story I wanted to tell. But I sat on the beach in Goa with my iPad, trying to write this story. And days went by, and days became weeks, and still the story refused to be told. And suddenly one day, I realized why. It's because that story, that wonderful adventure I had a year ago, wonderful, golden though it was in the past. And I was trying to write about something that had happened. And what I should be writing about instead was what was happening in the moment, there in golden Goa. And that was the lesson that place taught me. And so in that moment, I let go of that idea of writing the book about South America. And I said to myself, no, I am going to write about Goa. I am going to write about how a woman of a certain age can come to Goa and in 2 weeks can turn themselves into a goddess. And so that is what I did. That is what I did. I became a wild woman. I did everything that Goa has to offer. I did yoga by candlelight. I had henna tattoos. I had lovely manicures and pedicures. Girls, look at my mermaid toes. They are Goa toes and Goa ankle chains. I went kayaking. I went abseiling down waterfalls and threw myself into canyon pools. And living in the moment, being open to the moment, I had a love affair, as you do, with an Australian sculptor, a gorgeous man, and we had New Year's Eve together there in Goa. And if you have ever been to Goa, to Palolem Beach, the sky at midnight fills with fireworks and hundreds of sky lanterns, and the moon was hanging low, and I was wrapped in the arms of a new adventurer. So adventures are out there to be found, like Muthoni. Don't be afraid to tick the red pebbles, throw them over your shoulder and move on. Whatever has happened before, Take the good, remember it, throw away the bad, but go on into the world and have new adventures. This country is a perfect place for having adventures, I have to say. It is so full of life, so full of life. And I will be going home and writing the book. I don't want to go home, but I still have adventures to come because I'm going to Varanasi tomorrow. And I am looking forward to that hugely because I think a story that is going to be so steeped in life and love should probably come full circle in Varanasi. And I should meet the mortality of Varanasi. So I am looking forward to that enormously. And hopefully next year I will be with you with the finished book. Now, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? So, how are we doing for time, my lovely, lovely lady?
You have 40 minutes.
I have 40 minutes. Oh, that is fantastic. When I did the session the other day, it was the very first session of the whole festival, and everyone was kind of in chaos, running around. No one knew where anything was. And in all the chaos and the confusion, no one could find a copy of my book. But I have it here for you today, just to prove that I am a genuine author and don't just tell stories. They are actually books. I don't just talk about writing. I do sometimes stay in the chair and do it. Wild Magic is my third book. I like fantasy novels, and if you were here the other day, you will know why I like fantasy novels. When I was growing up, fantasy novels were the novels that I liked to read most of all. I was growing up in Liverpool, and to many people, Liverpool sounds the most amazing, wonderful, vibrant city. It is the city of football, Liverpool, Everton. It is the city of the Beatles, and all you need is love. But when you're a child growing up in Liverpool, it can be like any other city in the world. And it was grey and cold, and it certainly didn't have any of the magic or the colour or the vibrancy that you enjoy here in India. I was living in a very small house with my parents. I had a very small room. All I had was a bed and a bookcase. I didn't have a computer or a TV or anything like that, but I did have my books. And I loved reading my books. Because, as I said the other day, when you read a book, to me, it's like being able to open a window and fly out into another world. You can go wherever you want to go. You can go forward into the future. You can go back into the past. You can go down under the ocean. You can fly out beyond the stars. If you can dream it, you can do it. And you can find it all in the pages of a book. And this was my great escape. I was reading my books and opening those windows all the time. One night I was reading my book, and suddenly I found myself in a wardrobe. And the wardrobe was full of fur coats. And when I pushed them aside, it was snowing, and there was a light shining in the middle of the day. Once I was reading my book at bedtime, and suddenly, bang, the window opened. In came a strange boy. He took me by the hand. He flew me over the rooftops to a never land. And suddenly we were fighting with pirates. And there was a crocodile with a great alarm clock ticking in his tummy. And once I was reading a book, and I found myself standing on a street outside a factory. The air was thick with the smell of chocolate, and I had a golden ticket, a golden ticket. It would take me through those golden gates into that wonderland, the wonderland of magic, Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. And you know, just as Charlie was given that miraculous gift of a golden ticket to take him through the factory gates into Willy Wonka's factory, I felt when I was 6 that I had been given a golden ticket, that golden reading ticket that would open any door, any gate. It would take me through any window, down any rabbit hole, through any mirror, through any screen, into a wonderful, wonderful world. And all you people here today, I know, because you are here, you have those golden tickets, and you've got them tucked away somewhere secret, somewhere precious, tucked in your heart or down in your secret underpants. You have got those tickets, and use them, because as you know, those golden tickets become real. And for me, working hard with my stories and my writing and my telling, my golden ticket has become a real ticket that has taken me all around the world. I've told stories in Singapore and up to the Russias, to Kazakhstan, here in India, across to Africa, across to South America, more adventures. So hold on to those tickets. They are the most precious thing you have in life. You don't need any money as long as you've got that ticket into the world of stories and reading. You will be rich indeed. So, my book, Wild Magic, my third book, and I decided that I was going to take an old story and polish it up and make it new. And the story I chose was the story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin. Now, I don't know whether you know this story here in India. You know the story about the town that is full of rats? The story comes from Germany. It is about a town that is overrun by rats. Thousands of rats. No one knows how to get rid of them. Until one day, a strange-looking man comes into town, very flamboyantly dressed, and he says that he can get rid of the rats. And the mayor is so thrilled to hear this news, he promises him a bag of gold. And the piper produces a pipe, and he plays beautiful, beautiful music that enchants the rats. And he takes them down to the river and he drowns them all. But when he comes back to the mayor to get his gold, well, can anyone remember what happens next? What happens next? Yes, the king, the mayor, refuses to hand over the gold. And he says, "What are you going to do now, Piper? Are you going to conjure the rats back from the dead?" And the Piper says, "No, it won't be rats this time." And what does he do? What does he do? You know, what does he do? He does. He takes the children. He plays his pipe again. This time it is the children who come tumbling out of the houses and out of the shops and out of the schools, totally enchanted by his magic. And he takes them into the mountains. He plays his pipe. A door opens in the side of the mountain. The children follow him inside, and the door closes. And according to the legend, they never ever come out again. But there is one boy who gets left behind. He gets left behind because he has bad legs. He has a kind of twisted body. And there's nothing wrong with his brain. He wants to go with everyone, but he cannot. And so he gets left behind, and he sees the door shutting, and he's left all on his own. And that all happens very fast in this book, Wild Magic. You only have to read about that much of the book, and the door has closed, and the children are trapped inside the mountain. And it is the story of a brother and a sister. Mariana, the girl, she goes with the piper into the mountain, but it's her brother Jacob who gets left behind on the mountainside. So you have one trying to get in and one trying to get out, and it's the story of what happens next, the story of what happens inside that mountain. Actually, they don't stay in the mountain very long. The piper takes them through, and they come into a world of wild magic. Beautiful world, but it is full of strange monsters. And one of the worst monsters is a werewolf. And every month, this werewolf goes rampaging through the land. So, if you like those kind of dark, scary stories where people are having to run away in dark forests because things are coming out. It's a book you might well enjoy. And yes, full of magic and magical weapons and strange monsters. Very Narnia kind of landscape. And I do believe they have copies for sale in the bookshop. Now, I'm not sure about this, but I have been told that they really do have them. So get along to the bookshop, and if any of you buy them, just stop me around the festival, and I will, of course, sign them for you before you go home. But I wanted to know, has anyone got any questions they want to ask? Because I know sometimes people do have questions that they like to ask. And how are we doing on time? How are we doing on time? Half an hour, yes, good. Questions? Yes, we've got a question here.
Why didn't you be an Hollywood actress now?
Why didn't I be a Hollywood actress? I actually started off as an actress when I did drama at university. And I started out as an actress. I went to London to be an actress, and I was an actress, and I was a singer. But to be honest, I found acting too boring. It looks very, very glamorous, but actually there's a lot of hanging around. You wait hours and hours and hours, and then someone comes and fetches you, and you go onto the set, and you say a few lines, and that's it, and they wheel you off again, and kind of that's what it is. And you spend a lot of time waiting for the phone to ring, because you go to auditions, but lots of girls go to auditions, and not everyone can have the part. And so I found it just hugely frustrating. And I found that I just wasn't in control of my own life. It annoyed me that someone else had the decision over whether or not I could move forward in my life. And I was given a ticket to go to a storytelling festival in Wales. It was called Beyond the Border. It is the best storytelling festival. We have people here from Beyond the Border. It is the best storytelling festival in the UK. It flies in magnificent storytellers and musicians from all around the world. And it is held in a castle there on the coast in Wales. And it is totally magical. And I went to this festival and I saw people on the stage telling stories, and I just knew in my heart that I could do it, because over the years I'd already gathered so many skills of singing and acting and moving and writing. I just knew I could be a storyteller. And so that was how I started. And I love being a storyteller because, as I say, I am in control of what I am saying and what I am doing. And it is far more spontaneous because I am not working with a script. My head now is full of stories that I might tell you in 5 minutes' time. And I know that I can bend them and shape them to fit you. And so I find that very liberating and very freeing. I'm big on freedom. I like to be free. I don't like to be tied or tethered or caged, whether it's a script or by a man. So I just like to be out in the world. Another question from you lovely people. You tell the best questions here in India because they're kind of quite fierce. And they make us think, but you always begin by saying something nice. I've noticed this. Have you? This is how you ask questions, don't you? You say something really, really nice, and we go, oh, that's so lovely. And we feel like we've been hugged, and it's all like kitten soft. And then the real question comes, and it's got teeth and claws. And you go, what do you think about? So who's got one of those questions that will flip that, so you're going to do it to me, aren't you? You're going to be, look, you're gorgeous, it's going to be all cuddly, and then you're going to go, whoa.
Oh, well, I hope I can do that.
Yeah.
Firstly, that session was amazing.
You see? You see? Kitten soft. Yes, but...
But I think the question is going to be as soft as the...
Okay.
Ma'am, you said that now that you're a storyteller and that you write books, but was it other books that got you into writing in the first place, or was it something else? What inspired you to write? What inspired you to be free?
I think the reason I started writing books, to be honest, was to do with Harry Potter. Harry Potter just took over the world. I was already working as a storyteller in schools when Harry Potter started to get really, really big. And people started to say to me, "Where's your book?" And I would say to them, I don't have a book. I'm a storyteller. I tell stories. I don't write them down. And they said, "But why haven't you got a book? You know, you should have a go. You should write a book." And I thought, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I should have a go. I had never actually dreamed of being a writer because although I love writing, it is very hard work. It takes a long time. I am the world's slowest writer, honestly, and I find it very hard to stay in the chair and write because I want to be out and living and doing things. So it took me 3 years to write my first book, which was Bark Belly, but it has been wonderful. And what I like about books, which does fit in with the idea of freedom, is when you write a book, it is there, it's tangible proof of your talent, and it opens doors in a strange way that storytelling doesn't, because storytelling, we can be very, very wonderful in the moment, and we know that people are carrying the stories away with them, and we can change lives. But there is something about having it in hard print that has more status, it has more respect. It certainly does in the Western world. And so I found that once I became an author, my career took off in different directions, and I get to do different festivals. So that's why I love being a writer. But it absolutely was Harry Potter, I think, that got me going. Have we got another question? Yes, over here. Question over here.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm seeing you perform for the first time, and I have to say that you're an immensely charming performer.
Thank you.
My question is that you said that you're making a transition from writing about children to a novel on adults. What are the challenges that you think you'd face while making that transition?
The challenges I found when I've been trying to work on it is finding the form. I was going to write it, I thought, as a kind of autobiography, a little bit of a kind of eat, pray, love. I know Elizabeth Gilbert is here at the festival, and I thought it would be a kind of eat, pray, love book. But actually it's not. I've decided to write it as a novel. It's going to be like a kind of romantic novel. So the thing, I think, the challenge of stepping up to adult is finding the voice. And also there's a little nagging voice inside my head that thinks, maybe I won't be clever enough to write for adults, which is a very limiting thought when you think about it. But I've written for children for so long, you start to think, oh, I don't want to write the book, and then people say it's a little bit childish. So I suppose that's my nagging worry. But all I can do is try. I will write the book, it will come out, and the story will be told, the story that needs to be told, I think, will come out. One more question. We've got one more question here at the front, and then we'll have time for another story. Yeah.
It just popped in my head, and when you were discussing, I write sometimes, but I always feel that writing for kids is much more difficult than writing for adults.
It is more difficult, I think, because children are very quick to tell you what they like and they don't like. They're not as polite as adults in that. They really, either they are with you or they are not, and it's the same storytelling. It's very easy to tell when you have children engaged, whereas adults can be harder to gauge. It is true. So this little voice I have in my head is not right. I think it's more to do with the language, finding the appropriate language to communicate some of these things to adults, because the book I want to write is going to be largely about emotion. And as a storyteller so far, I've worked a lot with action. And so finding the words to express emotion is a challenge. And that's why reading things like Elizabeth Gilbert is very good, because she is so good at expressing herself and how she was feeling at any one time. But the time is flying by, and I'm going to tell you one more story that before I go. And it's a story that comes from the borders of England and Wales, where I lived for a long, long time. And it's a story about an old man, a really grumpy old man. And he needed a housekeeper. But there was problems because, as I say, he was so grumpy, so bad-tempered. None of the women in the village would work for him. He had a terrible habit of following them from room to room to room as they were doing their cooking and their cleaning and their baking. And he had a vicious little tongue, and he would go on and on and on and on with snidey little comments and sarcastic remarks and jokes that he thought were funny, but they weren't. They were cruel. And so, as I say, none of the women in the village would work for him, no matter how much money he was willing to pay. But one night, this old man was sitting in front of the fire. Suddenly there came a knocking at the door, and when he answered it, there stood an old woman, a stranger. He'd never seen her before. She wasn't from the village. And she said that she was looking for a job as a housekeeper. And as she was saying this, she looked at the old man, and she could see his nose was wrinkling as he looked her up and down, and she said, "Yes, I know I'm old, and I'm not very attractive, but I am a very good housekeeper, and I'm a superb cook. Come on, I need the work. Give me a chance. You can still get good wool off an old sheep." And the old man couldn't argue with logic like that, so he invited her in, and she started work the very next day. And just as she said, she was a wonderful housekeeper. She was a superb cook. But more than this, she was really quite ugly. And this gave the old man plenty to talk about. Oh, he was merciless. He followed her round the house all day long, going on and on and on and on about the way she looked. But strangely, she took it all in good grace, and she just got on with her cooking and her cleaning. And the days became weeks, and the weeks became months. And after a while, well, the old man realized that it just wasn't going to work. He was getting worn out with all this badgering. She was like an old fish that wouldn't come to the surface of the pool. This hard work was getting him nowhere. And so he started to become a little kinder, a little more courteous, a little more gentlemanly with her. And even the women in the village noticed, and they said, "Ooh, that old woman, she's working wonders on that old man." Well, one night, the old man was in bed, but he couldn't sleep. He had a terrible, terrible stomachache, and it was his own fault. He knew it was. The widow woman, she had made beautiful, creamy, sweet rice pudding, like a kheer for the pudding, and he had had 3 helpings of it. And now, oh, he was paying for it, in such pain. And he seemed to think it was her fault. And so he called out for her to come and do something. But she didn't come. So he called out again, louder now. Still, she didn't come. So he took his shoe and he banged on the wall of the bedrooms, trying to get her to come. Still, she didn't come. So in the end, he got out of bed and he went out of his room onto the landing and he banged on the widow's door. And still, she didn't come. And so he opened the door to her room and he went in. And what he saw in that room made him forget his pain in an instant. The room was dark. Just one candle burning on a table by the bedside. The old woman was in bed, fast asleep. When he got close, he looked down, and there in the candlelight on the table, he saw a pair of ears. Wooden ears. Beautiful ears, carved out of the palest wood. And when he looked down at the widow to see what she had for ears. She didn't have any ears. Where the hole should be, all the skin was pulled tight and shiny, and instead of ears, she just had like a little twisted bit of flesh. But down there in the candlelight, oh, the old woman was fast asleep, and she had a smile on her face, and she looked really happy, really content with the world. So he didn't wake her up. He just went. But in the morning, he couldn't wait to ask her the question. He came down to breakfast. It was still early. She was there in the kitchen. She was making breakfast. He said, "Oi, last night," he said, "I was in your room. Where are your ears?" And the old woman told him that her own ears had been burned off in a house fire. And it was her dead husband who had made those ears for her out of wood. And the old man said, "Yes, but I don't understand. You can hear me. We have conversations. We speak." And the old woman said, "No, I can't hear you. I'm quite deaf. But I can lip read, and it hasn't stopped me speaking. And you know, sometimes I think it's good being deaf, because I don't have to listen to what I don't want to hear." And he said, "Like what? What can you not want to hear?" And she said, "Well, for starters, I don't like gossip. And the women in this village, they always want to tell me this and that. I don't want to hear what they think. I want to make up my own mind. And I think you're a good man. I think you've got a big heart. I think you're kind. And I think you're funny." And with that, she turned away and she went to the stove and she brought out the bread rolls. And they were all hot and warm and soft, just as that old man liked them to be. And he knew that she got up at the crack of dawn to make this bread for his breakfast, just the way he liked it. And that was how she did everything, with this little extra bit of love and care. And before he knew what he was doing, he was getting down on his creaky knees and he was asking her to marry him. And she said yes. And so they were married there in the little village church. And he was 83 and she was 76. But the people said they had never seen a happier married couple. And after the wedding, and after the wedding feast, the tea there in the village hall, the old man took hold of his new wife by the hand, and side by side they walked home through the village, back to their house. And they went up the stairs into the bedroom, and she took off her ears, and he took out his teeth, and they climbed into bed, blew out the candles. And there in the dark, the old woman couldn't hear her husband's sighs of pleasure, but she could feel his fingers softly stroking the arms, her arms and the skin of her arms, and she could feel him lifting the hair from her neck and gently kissing her hair. And there in the dark, deep in her heart, she heard his words of love.